We've had some exciting pumps, and the crypto world is now split between the bottom is in and we're going higher, and nope, this is a bull trap. Today, we're joined by Paul from Definity, live again for some in-depth looks at the macro market, a look at how that could be impacting the crypto space, and a look at some viewer suggestions of altcoins, as well as we'll look at some of the blue chip crypto projects. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do know I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul is an investor in many markets. We do want to thank our Patreon members. We have a private Discord that only our Patreon members get access to. We also have a free Telegram group that you can join, and there's a link below. It's a fantastic community. Our admins frequently purge the bots, and we kick people that are toxic. So it makes for a first-rate community of intelligent people to join and get ideas from or bounce your ideas off of. Now make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show. Let's welcome Paul from Definity.
It's great to be here as always. And what an interesting day it is. We've got a Fed announcement in just a couple of hours time, an hour and a half. And we've got non-farm payrolls on Friday. So the market will be focusing on those events. We pretty much know that there's going to be a 25 basis point hike in rates. So it'll just be a question of perhaps the market has definitely discounted that. But there may be some who were hoping for more, and I just don't think they're going to get that. But, you know, as we said before on the markets, the way the markets react to a expected outcome can be completely contrary to what people think. So you might think less of a rate hike might push risk on and be good for all the risky assets out there, including crypto. But actually, we might be ready or close to a retracement. So this is a very important week. It's actually going to be one that I think we need to see out the way before we can make any sort of short-term calls, because, of course, these are big events. But as you said at the top of the show, is this a bull market or is there going to be a big retracement? I think there might be a small retracement, but I think we've seen the low. And our views on the big picture for crypto have been completely consistent, that the long term has been focusing on the upside. We always saw it as a correction. It was just a question of when it ended. And that completely aligns with what you've been saying as well. It's just that everybody obviously got very disillusioned, and understandably so, but that's what happens near the low.
Yeah, it is what happens near the low, especially when you're paying attention every day. And sometimes because you're passively follow the crypto markets, you have less emotions invested in it. Helps you see clearly, or a lot more clearly. I wouldn't be surprised if the bottom is in, but with that, if we don't get some kind of retracement here, like you're talking about, a small retracement. Because if the bottom is in and it is ready to run, that doesn't mean it runs up, straight up. It usually goes up, and then it starts heading towards a retracement. And all the people that were saying, it was a bull trap, see, I told you so.
Yeah.
And then it continues to run some more.
Well, again, you said it just now. What is the outlook for the market in terms of, are you a short-term trader or are you a long-term trader? And if you're a long-term trader focusing on the sort of cycles that you've been looking at on your channel for many years, then you realize that, okay, a month or two of a pullback, a few weeks in the long-term scheme of things isn't going to change a trend. What you're looking at is a big picture view that takes us from 23 into 24, where the risk profile has gone from being extremely bearish on cryptocurrencies to potentially extremely bullish. A lot of the reason why the cryptocurrencies were down in the first place was due to the realignment of American and then global interest rates from negative bond yields to positive bond yields to accelerating bond yields, and then this sort of complacency about inflation that shifted from everything's okay to, oh my goodness, we need to hike rates at 75 basis point clips at every turn for months on end and stamp on it, to where we are now, where things have become a bit more balanced. So the market has to get used to, or is getting used to, this kind of humming along situation where inflation will be relatively high, not printed in the official figures, but will be relatively high. And interest rates will stay, I think they'll settle around 5%, which I think the market will like very much. So I think the bigger picture is very positive for risk on assets. It's just we're at a pinch point here with potentially a tick up in the CPI number for when it comes out, which is in a couple of weeks' time. That may be a little more inflationary than we would have thought, and therefore the market may be taking a little breather stroke retracement. But this isn't going to interrupt any big picture trends.
Yeah, why don't we take a look at what you're seeing in the markets? Let's look at the things you're looking at that might affect the crypto market.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've got is the main asset that everybody's looking at, of course, is the stock market. And if you've watched the film The Big Short, and if you haven't, I suggest you watch it. It's a very good film. Christian Bale plays Michael Burry, and he has just put a tweet out saying sell. Now, that could be right. Whether that's long-term or not, I don't know. It's not investment advice. It's just he's not said it about anything. He's just said one word, sell. So I'm assuming he's talking about the stock market, but, you know, it could be anything. But I obviously people are going to read that as he is bearish. Now, the question is this borne out, from my point of view, on the charts? And I think he likes charts because he does pop them up every now and again and look for relationships. My view is we start off with the Dow 30, and we can see that this is in a constriction. So it's trading from around 32,500 to 34,000. And it's not really broken out of that range. So technically, I can't really say very much about it until we get an ejection from this range. Now, if it breaks this high, boom, we are going into all-time highs, which I think we're going to do at some stage this year. But the question is, will we get a bigger retracement before that happens? But the Dow is certainly performing much better than a lot of the doom mongers out there. The NASDAQ, as we know, hasn't been performing as well, but it is recovering. And some of the technology stocks have been doing much better than people thought. Now, one of the stocks that I like to look at, because I think it's most aligned, whether rightly or wrongly, you can decide whether that's correct or not, but rightly or wrongly, I think Meta will be a good barometer as to how crypto performs, because they're making a huge play in the metaverse, and that to me says that they think the future is there. And if it is there, I think there is a future for crypto. I can't see the two, one working, the other not working, but, I could be wrong. So Meta, as we've discussed a few times, had a really good bounce. It's gone right up to its 200-day moving average. It's amazing how these things happen sometimes. So it's hit the 200-day moving average and just come off, which incidentally, if you allow me just to bounce into a crypto market, we've seen exactly the same thing happen on Solana. So it's hit the 200-day moving average and it's just come lower. Now this is a good first stage trend, and I'd be expecting a bit of a pullback. So I'm wondering if the majors are going to do something similar, just pull back and we get a bit of a retracement, and then everyone says, "Oh, see, I told you so. It's all over, and it was just a bear market. Bear market bounce. We'll go into new lows." And then the next phase is another move up. So in many ways, it's giving people who've missed the boat an opportunity to jump in again. Now, the S&P has always been kind of in the middle of the two. You've got the Dow doing really well. You've got the NASDAQ not doing so well. And obviously, the S&P 500 represents some NASDAQ stocks, some Dow stocks being the top 500. So this is still in a range. So it's not telling me a whole lot. So I'm in this position where I'm like kind of wondering, I think the move will be down. I'm slightly cautious, but I'm not as bearish as some out there thinking this is, everything's going to crash. I don't think that's going to happen. I just think we're going to see a bit of a retracement. So as far as interest rates goes, which obviously is a big driver of Fed policy, or what the market thinks, more what the market thinks, how much people are spending to, or the cost of money for things like businesses and also for mortgages, very stable. It's been stable for a long time. Stable is good. People like stability. What they don't want is businesses can deal with higher rates if they know they've got higher rates. What they can't deal with is volatility, because they don't know where rates are going to be. So we've had relatively low rates on bonds. And if you think that the interest rate at the moment is 4.25%, the Fed funds rate, and we're trading in the 10-year bond yield around 3.5%, I think this has got a little bit more scope to go higher. But I don't think it's going to be a mad rush higher. I just think it will edge up. So this isn't saying a whole lot other than the risk on phase that we saw, the first big move in crypto, as it was catching up with everything else that had already gone. All equities had already bounced massively, and crypto was like, Johnny come lately, but we know why that is. The sentiment was bad for obvious reasons we don't really need to go into. But there we go. It's caught up. So now we're in this position where they should really, in my view, start all synchronizing. So this isn't, from what I can see, this isn't worrying me. This isn't flashing any warning signals. It's saying it's a relatively low rate. If anything, this is saying that risk on should continue. And perhaps I'm being a little too cautious at this point. Maybe I should be, thumping the table and saying, let's load the boat here. But I tend to be a bit more cautious for obvious reasons. So I'm going to wait until, we've seen the CPI handle, CPI released in a couple of weeks, and we've got the non-farm payrolls on Friday. So I want to see those couple of things out the way. And sure, if the market goes up from here, I personally don't mind chasing it if it's gone up, because that's if it's going to be strong, if we're going to hit new highs, then why not? But for the moment, the main signals are fairly neutral, and the final sort of indicator for me is the dollar index, and the dollar index is, if you're looking at cryptos, which everybody is on this channel is, and you're thinking, well, why are we looking at the dollar index? It doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make sense if you're looking at the broader risk profile for the market. Now, the fact that the dollar has gone down a lot has been very beneficial for risk on. And we've had phase one of that. Now, my core view is this year the dollar will continue to weaken, and this will support buying crypto. It will support lower rates. It will support equities going higher. So that strategy is one that is broad brush for the rest of the year. But this chart is, pretty fantastic in the sense that it's hitting major support around this 101 level. So it's close to the psychological 100 level, and we've got a rate decision today. Now, if we zoom into the price action, this isn't normally enough to suggest a change in trend, because it's very flat. And actually, I'm a little concerned that it'll just, drop quite aggressively and then return. So if I were trading this, I would want to stay short until I get that first tick up. But I think we are close to it, because this support here, 101.29.30, is matched here. And I think what we're going to see is some form of large head and shoulders reversal pattern. Now, it is also dangerous to call a pattern before it completes, but it's sometimes the market apexes with really important figures, and that's why I've been talking about the figures so much today. And when you've got the two things happening, it looks like the figures might, or the event of interest rates being released or raised, by 25 basis points, that might cause a reaction. And so potentially here, we could be nearing the end of this first phase of dollar weakness, and a rally in the dollar will probably match a risk-off phase for maybe a month or so, 3 weeks to a month.
Makes perfect sense. Shout out to Chris Ashby, who says, "Woo, hey Jay, hey Paul."
Hey Chris, yeah. This week I can see the comments. Like last week I couldn't see them. So yeah, it's great to be doing this live. So thank you for your comment there.
Doc Club NFT says, "Can you guys throw a UFO in the mix? I have $5 billion, bought very low in December 2022. but want to buy another 5 billion. What do y'all think? Well, we can't
Yeah.
give financial advice, but we will try to include that in
Sure.
what we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, 5 billion sounds like a lot, but it depends what the price is.
It's
I suppose.
super cheap, right? It's
Yeah.
0.0000017 right now.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's so many zeros. I have a hard time keeping track, which is not a terrible idea
Yeah.
for a crypto project to start it out so cheap.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, and it also depends on one's own circumstances, doesn't it? So,
Because it isn't like stocks where they can split it as the stock gets apparently too expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's not that they can't, but it's way harder than it is just for a company to do a stock split. And
Sure.
so they do that to keep the relative price seem low. And so crypto is like if they start out with a really, really high supply, it ends up having a lot of zeros there in the early days. If it does do well over time, then it gets to maybe 1 cent or 2 cents or $1. This one's a real long ways from ever being 1 cent. So we'll look at it. The club says it's got huge potential, but the amount being released per year is not good. Suresh says, hi, thoughts on Swarm Network? Thanks. I don't know Swarm Network, but we'll go through some of the picks from last week, and then we'll start hitting up some of what you guys are talking about. Do you mind if we hit into Bitcoin and ETH, and then we'll jump into some of these altcoin picks?
Absolutely, yeah. So let me find them where they've gone up here. So starting off with Bitcoin, we have got the let's put it on a log chart. Prefer that. So with Bitcoin, we got the double bottom. So we got the base around here. Long-time viewers of the channel will know that we were seeing whether this is a base or not. There was the potential for one more move down, but as it started to accelerate up, it gave us a clue that this was actually going to be a bit more of an important low. Sentiment was very negative. Completed a double bottom here, which was the first technical buy signal, strong technical buy signal in a very long time. If you notice, the 200-day moving average, this purple line here, is still low. I mean, it's still low relative to where the price is now. That goes to show quite how long it's been in this downward trend. Now, this rally was so powerful, it managed to even break this major downward trend line, which is superb. So, potentially, this is a short-term consolidation, and it is a short-term consolidation, but the question is it just going to go straight up towards 25,212, this resistance support area that it needs to break in order for it to be, nothing's without doubt, but kind of very high percentage chance that we've seen the low and, we're going back to all-time highs. Or is it going to get a retracement here and it forms a bit more of a consolidation before we take another run up at that level? I'm not sure at this point. It's doing extremely well. And on that chart, it reminds me of the way the dollar is sitting at the moment, right close to support. This is hitting or close to resistance or making a very similar technical pattern. So I think they're going to start to move in a very similar way. I just sort of need to get this week out of the way to see if that theory is right. So whilst I don't mind buying into a new high, I would be a little bit cautious because, for a short-term move, going from 23,000 to 25,000, that's pretty nice. But I'm putting my long-term hat on and saying, well, is it worth going for a 2,000-point move when we could have potentially a bigger retracement? So I am going to say that we need to see a retracement here before I can get bullish again. I am bullish long term, but before I'm bullish short term. So I'm willing to be a bit more patient and wait. So I think in this situation, if I was long, I would just hold it and move the stop up. But I wouldn't be adding to it here. But overall, structurally, Bitcoin has done extremely well. And this is really good to see because it was underperforming ETH, and it's bounced back in spectacular fashion. So this is exactly what we want to see for the whole of the crypto space. So
What's so interesting too is we're jumping over to ETH, but how strong Bitcoin has been
let's pop
versus
back.
ETH.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
one of the things I was listening for different opinions on this, and somebody made a good point that they said, like, institutions, a lot of times when they do come in, they go for Bitcoin first. And traditionally, what would happen the past 4 years was money would come into Bitcoin, then it would then flow into ETH and then some other bigger alts, and then it would flow into some micro caps or some smaller market cap alts. And so you saw that big in 2017 and some of the different pumps, even in 2020. That doesn't mean you can't have a sector pop off. Like we saw the AI sector, all the crypto projects related to AI really start popping off 2 weeks ago. And so we are seeing right now, though, generally, other than like some sectors that have something big going on, like money's coming into Bitcoin, which sometimes then flows to other things. Because it's not that ETH is doing okay, but Bitcoin's definitely been outperforming it.
Yeah. And the important thing about ETH was that it did not break its equivalent low. So the 2022 low was not breached by ETH, which was very well. We pointed it out. It's very strange given how bearish the sector was, and I read that as a bullish signal. I thought that was really good. But the problem is we had this constriction, which a big triangular constriction, which was so clear, and those are usually bearish. So we had those two sides saying, one was saying, look, this is really unusual. The market should have gone much lower given the news. That's an important signal for a low. Against, we needed to see some strength, and we have seen some strength, but the rally looks on this chart to be a bit more muted, which is why Bitcoin has been outperforming a bit. So where it's hovering is actually a really interesting point. 1720 in ETH is key. So the market has kind of lost a little bit of courage just below that big level. I think it will break, but whether it will break now, whether it will break on a pullback, I'm thinking it's probably going to break on a pullback. So or it will break after a pullback. So the market will come down and then go back up again, would be my kind of thesis for how this could trade. But I have to be led by the market. So this is what's important, and the big headline for me is that these sharp moves are indicative of the end of the bear trend, at the end of the crypto ice age. So the rolling into altcoins and all the altcoins projects. I mean, of course, we can't say whether they're all going to be good or not, and there may be other, people out there who are going to be deceptive and try and use the kind of interest in the space for their own gains rather than creating good projects. That's always going to happen in every in any sector in the markets or elsewhere. But overall, people become far more kind of wary given these big sort of events, and given that they're more wary, and the stronger projects get to survive, and they tend to trust the bigger projects, which then become bigger. So I think what you have is a kind of clearing out of the dead wood, and which is good, and eventually the good projects kind of break out, which is exactly what happened in the internet stocks in the early years. You had plenty of projects that were just trying it on really and trying to ride the dot-com wave without a proper business plan or idea, and then in the crash they got cleared out, and then you had a consolidation and a move into good projects. So I think the markets have to do this. I mean, it's part of a market cycle. You just cannot get around it, and that's what it's done. But the main point is we could be we could and should be at the beginning of a major bull phase, and the fact that not many people believe it actually adds to the fact that
it's a confirmation.
Yeah, exactly, because if it's obvious, it's obviously wrong. That's one of the market axioms, and some of the best projects are hard to see as well. So some of the best calls are much less obvious. So those two are the kind of two sides of the same coin. So most people will say, well, that's it, it's dead. We don't want to trade it anymore, and we don't trust it. And yet it's rallying. So
We
in a
love to
nutshell,
hear those phrases in this. And
yeah,
like for some perspective, for those that weren't around the last crypto winter. So it was January 2019, I think. So after hitting a peak in December 2017, so about 13 months later, it hit this bottom of 3,200, and there were many analysts saying, nope, it's going lower. It hit 3,200. They're like, nope, the bottom's going to be at 1,800, or the bottom's going to be at 2,400, and that's what it has to hit before we can turn around and go the other direction. Never hit that. In fact, when it hit 3,200, it bounced up, and people were saying, yep, it's still going to go back down. So a lot of the same things that you're hearing now, right? Different price numbers, because we're at a different price point. Every low between the different cycles on Bitcoin is higher. So have we hit the bottom? It's hard to know for sure. Probabilities suggest yes, we have. My thinking is it would take a major event to bring things lower than where we're at. It is possible, but I think likely the bottom is in.
yeah. So we've got Saul G. So I'm hoping you're a Better Call Saul fan, obviously with a name like that. I'm hoping you are. What a brilliant series that is. So just saying hello to him, saying what's going on. Actually, quite a lot's going on. Really, it's a very interesting market. There's a lot moving. The last few weeks, actually, I was just kind of thinking back today. Weirdly, a lot of the altcoin picks kind of ended up being a buy, and even though the big picture was kind of not clear, that to me was quite interesting. So I don't know what your thoughts on how altcoins could potentially move first, but I suppose there's no written rule about it, is there really?
So that's just been the trend that it has been. And part of the reason is this, so Bitcoin was the first blockchain, the first crypto project, right? And it's really kind of established itself as an alternative to gold. And so it's trusted as that. And it's kind of hit its use, and it just continues to expand that use. So ETH for a while was just a new altcoin, and then ETH started to really realize what its use case was. And so ETH can run independent of Bitcoin. A lot of the other altcoins, some of them are starting to hit their use cases. When they hit their use case, they can then run with that technology running. So AI was starting to really pop off as people saw what Chat GPT could do, and people thought, oh my gosh, I want to invest in AI. And I'm curious to see, look at one of the AI charts, see if you think things are going to keep running, because they've run up. Now they're kind of retracing a little bit, which is normal even when runs up. And then often they'll take another leg or two or three up and keep running for a little while before then retracing, if the broader crypto market doesn't retrace. So alts running before Bitcoin historically didn't happen, except for some massive news coming out, like middle of the bear market, Engine announced a partnership with Sony phones, and it 10x'd all of a sudden, and then it retraced over the next few months right back to where it was. So alts can run independent of Bitcoin, especially as their use cases start to come to fruition, and we can see what their use cases are, and the world starts waking up to that use case. So blockchain gaming, I think, will start to come to fruition and could run completely independently of all the other markets, except for maybe the regular gaming market, because say the whole world goes into a massive recession. What usually goes up during a recession? Video gaming and alcohol sales. So alcohol will do well, and guess what? Video gaming will. And if blockchain gaming, because the ownership idea becomes big, that blockchain gaming could do well. Bitcoin could even do well, because during major recessions, sometimes gold does well. And so Bitcoin, I think, is a much better alternative as a store of value than gold, in my personal opinion. So I'm curious to look at some of these altcoin charts and see what you're seeing in them. One that really popped off is Spores, and I'm really disappointed in them for popping off, because I've been loading my bags on them and I want more before the price jump that they just had. And I'm like, dang it. because I like to buy cheap. That's one of my things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this again is one of those markets that I have to wait for it to reverse. But I think you've been obviously much more bullish on this from a longer term perspective. I can't break the rules of technical analysis, which is a trend is assumed to be in effect until it gives a signal that it's reversed. But once it's broken a trend line, we can talk about. I mean, this is a great lesson in how trends change. We can see the phases. So you get a break of a trend line, a slowing of the downward trend, and then I've mentioned many times about the symmetry. So I like to see it. I'm not saying you see it every single time, but I like to see symmetry. And when a market is accelerating at least the rate at which it was falling, then I'm interested. So sometimes you get a rally, and the rally, so for example, here was very weak, or here is actually a good example. It'd gone up and then it just sort of went sideways, and that wasn't enough to really change the trend. And then we got this continuation of this big downward move. What you're looking for is something exactly like what we've seen here, where the market is shooting up to indicate that this is the beginning of something much bigger. Now, of course, the risk profiles are much higher with altcoins than they are with other projects, and there's various degrees of that. But even though the market's retraced here, it's still in a bullish trend. The trend has reversed, and we're now looking at a move up. So if we put this as the new trend line, as long as it's over that line, in simple terms, I'm bullish. Now, where I can see a bit of a kind of sticky situation coming up could be around this level here, which is what, a fifth of a cent or whatever the zeros are. So it could repeat this bit. So where it hits here, just does a reversal. I like the idea of a bigger head and shoulders reversal, which would then show up on a weekly chart. See, if you shift it over to a weekly chart, you get like a step back. It's a bit like looking at Google Maps when you're going on a long journey, and looking at the big picture, which is really important to do. So if the market is making a important low, it will show up on the weekly charts, which this does. But that is the first major resistance point, and I would expect a consolidation around this zone anyway. But overall, that's in a buy. So I think there will be an opportunity to jump back in again on a pullback. Mm-hmm. So, would I be chasing it today? Perhaps not. But I think, broadly speaking, it's still a buy because it's done enough to show that it's based.
Yeah, looks like a solid base there. In Spores Network, so I'd like to follow teams that I can believe in with a narrative I can believe in. And Duke, the CEO and one of the co-founders, I think Eric Wynn is his other founder. I like both of them, and their personalities are very different, and they balance each other, and they have huge ties to Asia and Asian gaming. Although Duke also has huge ties to Silicon Valley and all over the U.S. And so he's got, a perfect background for where blockchain gaming is going. And Spores has kind of turned into a launch pad and a development pad for a lot of the Asian markets. Now, unfortunately, I don't speak any of the Asian languages. I wish I spoke Mandarin and Vietnamese and Korean. It would be so much easier to see what's going on with Spores. However, I did reach out to Duke, and he is coming on the channel next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific for a live AMA, which is fantastic. That way you can get a feel for him yourself. I did interview him again before, but it was over a year ago. And so this will be like a fresh update on what is going on with them and the direction so that you can get a feel for where things are going. I don't know what led to this big boom, probably some kind of news, or maybe the charts just got too cheap and there have been some whales watching and they started loading in, and then people saw the charts moving and more came in because of what the charts were doing. I don't know. But usually this kind of stuff is followed by a retracement, which is another opportunity to get in really cheap. Now, when I talk about it being expensive, it is actually nowhere near expensive. I mean, their market cap is still 415,000. So it's not that it's expensive. It's really cheap. Look, I have to just keep zooming in here just to be able to see that. So it's like, now I can put it on log scale and that kind of fixes the problem. But if I take it off log scale, it once was at 10 cents. It now has retraced like 99.9, I think, down from there. I messed up and I lost even where it's at. And I have to reset it. Okay, so it is extremely cheap compared to what it's been, and retraced into kind of oblivion. And some people just wrote it off as dead. Well, OMI was written off as dead in the last bear market, and then it did about 1,000 or 2,000x from the bottom. Will Spores do that? I don't know. I hope so. I picked up some more in December, I believe, after we looked at it, and I went ahead and bought some more. I have some, and it's retraced way down from what I was buying it at. That's kind of sometimes what happens to me. I buy when things get cheap, and they sometimes get cheaper, but I'm patient enough to wait till the rains come back in. And when that happens, things take off, and usually I'm hugely in profit, unless the project then fails during that crypto winter. Sometimes that does happen too. All right, let's take a look at, Justin says gold is manipulated. Yes, I think there's a lot of manipulation there, and some naked shorting pushes the price down. In fact, there's naked shorts have been in the news a lot lately on businesses doing this that suppresses the prices of things. All right, let's take a look at Illuvium. We just had Kieran Warwick on yesterday, and yesterday was a busy day. Had Tom Anderson from Devio and also building Litcraft on, and then later in the day we had Kieran Warwick from Illuvium. So let's take a look at Illuvium and see what's going on with their chart.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had already, I think the last couple of weeks we've been looking at Illuvium, which is interesting and very good timing, because it is breaking this, well, it broke this downward trend line. Obviously we'd looked at this last week or the week before, because I've already drawn this in, or it was already drawn in, left on the chart there. So that trend line is broken, which is a great signal for the end of this bear phase. It kicked off this move with a double bottom, so that is the basing pattern, the beginning of a low, which is a good sign. And the next resistance point is, I think we may have said it before, is at $80. So that's where I would expect some form of retracement. It obviously isn't guaranteed that it will happen there. It could happen earlier, but within this zone from where we are now, 67 to 80, we should be braced for a correction, potentially back down to $52, and then a move up, which should take us beyond that $80 and hopefully to something like 150 as a kind of ballpark. This trend is still developing. I mean, it's still, you've got to bear in mind that this has been a very strong bear market. So this new bull trend will attract some people who just want to bail out and take whatever loss that they've made and just exit. So it will run into that, of course. But I think structurally, this is forming a really interesting low, and we've got to definitely keep looking at it. If we don't look at it sort of at least once every 3 weeks, then somebody better shout, because this could be really interesting from a basing technical point of view. But overall, structurally, the bias is to the upside, so it's a buy. The only thing that I would like to have that we can't as yet is an upward trend line that is in a sustainable angle. So what I mean by that is, when the market kicks off an upward trend, you often get these really fast trend lines, which are great, and they can go for a while, but it's not going to continue like that forever, of course. I mean, it'd be great if it did. Even if it continued for a few months like that, it'd be great. But most likely it will settle down and we'll get some form of 45-degree angle, and that is a more sustainable. I prefer to see something that's going up at a sustainable, consistent rate rather than too fast where it can just blow out. So that's the only thing. I think it needs a pullback just to set it up as a stronger consolidation of this low, which, as I say, is completing potentially a inverse head and shoulders. But overall, I'm still bullish. So it hasn't really changed at all from when we last looked at it.
Yeah, so we also had on last Friday Scoriox, and Scoriox is, if you haven't followed his channel, follow his channel. He's got a newer channel, so not tons of subscribers yet. I feel like his information is golden, and the way he looks at things is very sharp. I think he has an amazing future. And the way he looks and thinks about crypto, I wouldn't be surprised if he is super rich in the coming 6 years. He definitely stuck around during this bear market, and so he clearly gets the cycles that happen. I think he's going to do very well, and I think you can benefit from great information on this channel. But he I had asked him about this big Illuvium token unlock that would happen, and I think that happens in March, though I'm struggling to remember the date, and we looked at that, and there is a big unlock coming, a bunch of staking rewards. So people, a huge amount of people staked. I think it was a year ago in March, and after 1 year of staking is when their staking rewards unlock that they can then use them. And so those are pure profit for them, and so they might get dumped on the market. I hope so, but I did go ahead, and after the last time we covered this, I went ahead and just bought some, and it was about $62, my buy-in. So it's not even up very much from there. I'm going to continue dollar cost averaging in this, hoping that it comes down. And if it does come down, maybe I'll be able to make a bigger buy and get more in this token. I had been waiting since it hit $300 heading up before peaking out at $1,800. But at $300, I had missed some massive run up already. It already over 10x'd, and I just don't run into green candles. And so it hit $1,800. In the meantime, I caught other pumps. So it's not like I was left high and dry and didn't make any money there. So it still went from $300 another, 6x from there before then retracing. And I've been watching this one, waiting for good entry levels. And I did call this a buy when it hit below $40, although I didn't have any funds liquid at the time to put into it. I did almost sell something to roll it into there, but waited, and it pumped on me. So my first entry was at $62. I'm hoping to make some more, and I'm hoping when it comes up this sharp, it usually will retrace, and there's usually then a better entry level. But I did make a small buy at 62 in case, and I'll make a bigger buy if it retraces some. And then if it retraces back into that 40 zone, which it might never do again, if it does, I'll love it, and I'll be able to really load the boats on it. I like where they're going with this. They're going to be really coming out with a lot this year that's playable, and already they have come out with some stuff that's playable, and they're leading a lot of the blockchain games as far as what tech is already playable and going to be playable this year. And so they have that early mover advantage, and I like that. Thanks, by the way, Comey Skywalker, for the super sticker. We appreciate it.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
What is the super sticker? I'm not familiar with
it's just basically like a super chat, but
right.
It's
cool.
Just like, a $3 donation to the channel. We appreciate that.
Excellent. Thank you.
So
that's very nice.
Saul G, I didn't catch what this part is about. He's like, there sure is, and I'm excited to keep buying.
Oh, I said there was a lot going on, and he's yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump. Let me say, so for you, Illuvium, I didn't catch. Is it a buy, a wait, or
a buy?
sell?
Yeah, it's a buy. It's a buy long term. I think we've had that as structurally, whilst it's above $52, it's a buy. But
yeah.
Just be wary that we might get a bit of a pullback.
Perfect. For me, I did buy some. I loaded up a little bit near these prices, and it was just under these prices, just because I need to buy some, and then I'm waiting for more. So do I like it at this? Well, I liked it enough to go ahead and buy some, And usually there is some kind of retracement, like Paul was saying. It's got a really steep up incline like this. There's a lot of indicators coming together that may cause the market in general to settle for a couple weeks, if not a month. And then maybe we're ready to run some more. But during that settlement is when I would take fiat and buy something like this. Cool. Let's take a look at NTX. Now, NTX, we could look at a number of different crypto projects. Maybe I'm biased towards NewNet because I have some of this. I don't have any of the other AI tokens we looked at last week, but AI took off and was running. So NewNet is one of the many AI tokens.
Yeah, I think I popped this on and it's obviously that chart hadn't updated. There we go. That's
the one we're looking for.
That's more. I was wondering why we were looking at that other chart. I thought not much happening there other than it going sideways to down maybe. Whoa. So this is kicking off. Did we? I don't remember talking about it, but we did talk about a few AIs last week. So look, it hasn't formed a massive base before the turnaround. I mean, it's not essential that it does. It's just I feel a bit better that there's a solid low. It's like the platform for or foundation for building a house. I like to see it consolidate and then move higher. To be fair, I suppose since June last year, not a lot had happened. Then we got this final move down. So long-term holders were probably wondering what on earth was going on because it was either going sideways or lower. So this is very much welcome, and you can see that this is a change in market dynamics, a huge change, because markets have signatures and obviously range signatures, trending signatures, but the way this has moved, you can tell that volume is coming into the market. The actual bars themselves look different, and I know that's a subtle thing, but it's encouraging because it means good volume means more interest, which is usually a potential for more upside. There isn't a whole lot of history here, so it's relatively new, but this trend is solid, and the first move has moved enough before the consolidation. This is a classic continuation pattern consolidation, which may be doing that again, but again you've got to be a little bit more cautious of altcoins because their volatility is much higher. So I think a good buy point for me would be coming back to the top of this move here. That's really good resistance. So if I pop that on there, waiting for a little pullback might be a strategy to that we could deploy in order to get in this. Now, as I said before, I don't mind buying a squeeze, but just because of the broader macro themes, I'm going to be a bit cautious for this week. But as far as the bigger picture goes, yeah, it's possible that this is just going to run up and crash back down again, but it's less likely. It's less likely given it's done two phases of that. It's done this first phase. If it's not going to work, I would expect it to come straight back down. So it cleared all this resistance where there must have been a load of people waiting to get out. It's cleared all that without any problems. It's gone much higher. So I think sentiment here is the chart showing us that sentiment is very positive. The only other caveat I would say is I would like to see it come back to a more sustainable angle of trend potentially. So that means that at some point we'll come back here, and then if we go to the big picture, it's it goes sideways for a bit, retraces, and comes to what I would say is potentially a better angle of trend for the long term. But overall, that's a buy. There's no reversal pattern. There's nothing to say structurally that the trend should go down. Now that doesn't guarantee it will definitely go up, because nothing is 100% ever, and we are dealing with some very risky products here. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a surefire bet, because nothing at all is. It's just that when I look at a chart I try to find things that refute what I'm seeing. And so I'm trying to find something to tell me I shouldn't be buying. And at the moment, I can't see that. At these levels, and when it was trending down, it was pretty clear that there was no buy. The trend was lower, but that's not the case anymore. The only thing I would The only other thing I would suggest looking at is potentially a 50% retracement from whatever the high is. And I'm not convinced that that is actually the high, although it might be. So I'd have to double check some data. When a market retraces back, 33%, 50%, and 66% are the major retracement levels. So I would just look to see if it's hitting one of those, where you get potentially a bigger pullback. But overall, it's looking really good.
Yeah, that is about the high. It just released prior to that. So it went straight up, and then all of a sudden they started tracking it, and it hit that. That is about the high at around the 22, I think 22 cents mark.
Okay.
And so it has retraced from that all the way down. And some of that is the token vesting, right? So now just over 50% of the token is in circulation already. So those early days when a project launches, often the total supply of the token is really squeezed, which causes it to pump really high because there's not very many tokens in circulation, and the demand exceeds the supply, which takes the price off tremendously, which gets them a story, gets them in the news, and makes a lot of people aware of the project. And then as the tokens vest, really the price suffers for the next while, especially as you get into a bear market like we've been. So number one, a bear market or a crypto winter. Number two, tokens vesting into circulation and getting sold on the market pushes the price way, way down. And that pendulum swings, in my opinion, too far the other way, which is great for us swing traders because I like buying cheaper than it should have ever gotten to, and then waiting for the momentum to come back in the market and for it to take off. So now you said this was a buy.
Yeah.
And that's really, if you were to buy it, say at this level, where would you put your stop in? So that if it came all the way back to that prior trend line, you didn't have to ride that all the way down to that trend line.
Yeah, I would say that if I'm buying this, I don't want to see it below this level. So 1.8
so 1.79.
Yeah, around 1.8 cents, I would say. So I would be thinking, okay, that's come perhaps a little too far down, and that's where I'd be thinking about maybe exiting. So if I was to just sort of shut my eyes and buy it, that's if I'm actively trading it. If I was going to shut my eyes and buy it, I would just use this upward trend line. So I'd have, or something like a moving average, so 60-day or something like that, moving average, and that would be my exit signal. So this way, the market can consolidate. This trend line will always be rising, so it'll always be reducing risk where it can. But yeah, I don't mind it coming back, but I wouldn't want to see it much below here, because that to me should be really solid support. It consolidated here, and that was the high of the range as well. So if it starts to get below there, I'd be wonder what's going on there and be thinking about getting out.
This makes sense. That makes total sense. Let me just share some fundamentals on this one. So we do see that over 50% of their tokens is in circulation. A max supply of 1 billion. 504 million are in circulation. So its market cap is still only 16 million, which is fairly low. Now, Nuna is related to Singularity, and both of them have on their team Dr. Ben Gortzel, who is one of the key people in AI. They call him the godfather of artificial intelligence. What I'd like about that is I've seen in the crypto space a lot of crappy projects come out and say, oh yeah, we're doing all this stuff by AI, but they really don't have the right AI team. So it was a catchy buzzword in 2017, 2018, 2019 that a lot of people would throw on their projects, but they really didn't have the team to back their AI and then be like, oh, so-and-so's worked in AI for 5 years. Ben Gorsel is one of the leading people in AI, so he definitely brings some depth and some seriousness to the project, as well as a reputation that he's very driven not to tarnish, right? Some team member having worked in AI for 5 years is not near the same depth. And that doesn't mean that project can't be legit and do well. But I did see a lot of projects that I still doubt to this day whether they were legit. And a lot of them flamed out during the fair market because it might have even just been a cash grab from the beginning. I don't know. Or whether it was a legitimate project and they were trying to succeed and just failed. On some of those, I can't tell, but I know it's a buzzword often a lot of people try to raise money on when AI becomes hot, and then they're really not serious about their project. And some of it, they take some of that money raised and they stash it away to the side, knowing that the project is likely going to fail. And really, it was just a way to get into the millions of dollars. That has never been what I felt from SingularityNet or NewNet. So that's why I talk about these projects and feel comfortable talking about them. It's because I feel like they're legitimate projects. Now, whether they ultimately succeed or fail, I don't know. In crypto, we're early stage VC investors. Just know that some of the projects you invest in will fail. You try to narrow it down to projects that are solid teams working on a solid idea that have the best chances possible to succeed. Cool. So for me, I'm not buying at these levels. No way. I might even take some profits on them. So do I like it? I might take some profits soon. I haven't taken any profits on this, but I like it a lot. I'm hoping that the consolidation happens and then it runs up some more. So we'll see how it plays out. But
so you're a sell rather than a wait?
Yeah, well, so I have some that I've loaded up on and I'm in profit on it. So I might take some profits out, but I suspect there might be another leg up. It's 50-50. Like you said, there's some broader sentiment that might push the markets down for many macro factors. And maybe AI keeps running even if that happens, because I suspect the broader market's going to go through a retracement after such bullishness. It may or may not impact AI. So because AI has really been in the people's mind because of Chat GPT, and that is still growing and more people are checking that out. So even if the broader market sinks, AI might continue to run for a little while. But like you said, this trajectory doesn't continue for forever. So I might take some profits, even though long-term I believe in the team and everything. And if I take some profits, then I'm looking along that trend line that Paul drew out to load back in, right? So do I believe in this in long-term? Yes, I still very much believe in long-term. But while you're ahead, sometimes you take profits. Cool. So if I didn't have any, would I buy at this point? No, I would not. I wouldn't take that risk because I'd say at best there's a 50% chance it continues to run. It's hard to tell. Yeah, that first pullback was a good point. The second one is more risky as far as whether it will continue to run. So cool. Let's take a look at what is next. GALA and then cornucopias, and then we'll try to spend a few minutes on some viewer picks.
Yeah. So GALA was, again, one that we've already looked at, and I think we would have said that this is based. We've got a nice long-term trend line that we can now draw, and this low was, of course, very significant. And the question here was, is it making an inverse head and shoulders pattern? So will it get a pullback before it goes up, or is it going to go straight up? It has just edged a bit higher. So we could probably redraw it. I still think there's prospects for a retracement, but maybe that's going to come in around 7 cents as opposed to here. And we'd just see a little pullback, little dip, and then the trend goes up. But this one's fairly straightforward for me. As long as it's above this main trend line, I'm going to be bullish. And Now, I don't mind a pullback. That doesn't change the structure of the trend. It's broken this downward trend line, which was in effect from November 21 all the way down to December 22, so over a year. And that broke, which is a great signal. We got the very sharp break through it, which is very nice because it's conclusive. It's not, it breaks it, sits there and hangs around. It's just gone right through it, which is exactly what we want to see. There is clearly a lot of resistance around this area here. I'm going to draw that in actually. So if it does trade up to that level, either this week or within the next couple of weeks, you know, I would expect that to be a stopping point. But we're very much saying that, broadly speaking, there could be a dip in all the markets. So this is no exception really. And that dip is just part of a broader bull market. So it's still a very interesting one, and it was a good one to call whoever's, you know, put it in front of us a few weeks ago or maybe longer.
Yeah, so this is, oh, it's a buy for you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, it's a buy. Yeah.
Yeah, because the general trend is up, and even if it retraces some, you feel like the trend is reversed, and that in the coming year it's going to be a much better direction than the past year was.
Yeah, so I kind of look at this and assume that I might not see this for, say, 3 or 6 months. So
yes, and if you called it a wait, but you didn't recheck it in the next few weeks, you would have missed out to buy any retracement that might have happened. And so then when you checked it again in 6 months or a year, you'd be like, it's so much higher than when I looked at it before.
Yeah.
I think generally on a lot of these things, the trend is reversing, right? And I think the bottom is in, but I don't know. This one went all the way down to 1.7 cents after being at like almost 90 cents. And so the retracement was severe. That's about a 97% retracement or more. GALA, I think GALA is going to be one of the projects that is around 10 or 20 years from now. They're doing a lot of things right. And so I have just a touch of GALA. I picked up some earlier. I wish I had more. I did go huge into one of their competitors. They spent over $100K in Myria buying their nodes. Now, I missed buying GALA nodes in the early days. Would I have loved to? Yes. And those nodes have done tremendously. And if you're running a node, you get tokens every month. I know somebody that did get some nodes. At one point, they were making $10K a month from the tokens that they were getting from nodes that they paid between $5,000 to $10,000 for. So now the token value has dropped since that point, and so they haven't been generating $10K a month recently from the nodes. But GALA has done a lot of cool things. They're creating their own ecosystem. Almost, I think they're going to continue to have interoperability within their ecosystem because they have some control over their own ecosystem. And I think they're going to be one of the big game studios and big players in blockchain gaming. And I think they've set themselves up for that. You know, I'm bummed that I don't know how I missed their early days, but I did. And I did pick up some the last few months, so I can't complain too much because how low and cheap it retraced to. But I would suspect if you're looking for a pickup on this, keep watching. And you might see a good retracement entry point. Do your own research to see if you like blockchain gaming and if you like GALA. Paul Barron has done a lot of interviews. They're a sponsor of the Paul Barron Network, and so they come on pretty frequently, and he interviews the team there, so you can get a feel for the team and see if you like it too. Cool. Let's take a look over at COPI, cornucopias. We haven't looked at this in a few weeks. This is another blockchain gaming project. That's not the one.
Yeah, there was, okay, so that's interesting because when I put the code in, it didn't have data.
Cornucopias, there. We see it versus the dollar.
Yeah, that one I don't think has been updated. Let's see what it pulls. Oh, Nah, that's really strange. Okay. I pulled it earlier and I thought it hadn't, so I must have just missed it. So, okay. Anyway, we got the right one. That's the most important thing. So this is still in this downward trend. So we can draw a clear downward trend here that hasn't quite, well, it hasn't broken as yet. It's got very close to it, but it hasn't actually done it. Now, I seem to remember us talking about this with these two spikes. I'm going to ignore that because I think that data's wrong. Even if it isn't, it didn't stay there. So I don't like to ignore price action, but clearly there's something not right there. So this is more consistently correct. This normal price action here. So this is the downward trend line. It needs to break that. And given the way a lot of other markets have already done that and they're ahead, this becomes a potential catch-up play, which is possible. It's very possible that this plays catch-up and suddenly surges, but I can't trade it and say that it will do that until it starts to show signs that it's gonna do that. So in other words, it needs to give me a signal that it's starting to accelerate. That signal would be a break of this downward trend line. But until it's done that, I'm going to be slightly cautious. Now, if I was holding it, I wouldn't be bailing out. I would hold in there because it's made a higher low. So this is the low. These lows are rising. That's absolutely fine. So from sort of September last year, it's been going up. It's also held out pretty well considering all the bearish sentiment too. But overall, if there weren't other better things, I would say it would be a very speculative buy. So I wouldn't mind having a small position in it, just as a spec buy, just because it's recovering. But given that there's other things that are moving quicker and looking better, I think I'd prefer to wait on this and sort of put the funds somewhere else. So for me, it's basically a wait until it shows some more signs of breaking out from its base.
I like this one. I like the project a lot. It's near that upper trend line. I like buying near that lower trend line, right? So within this space, that upper trend line is often a good time when it's trading sideways to take profits. Depending on your tax strategy, sometimes it's better just to not do any short-term trades and hold for over a year because in many jurisdictions put you in a different tax category. But if it comes anywhere near that lower trend line again, I'm going to get some more. So for me, it's just a wait. Maybe if you're trading short term, it might even be a sell and then rebuy cheaper. There's not a huge gap between the buy and sell. Like, if it comes down to that lower trend line, it's only going to be at 1.6 cents roughly. So it's not like there's a huge margin to get additional, but a little bit. Let's take a look at some of the suggestions, make sure we get to some of the comments. Let's jump over to UFO real quick. And let me share my screen. I've got now UFO. So I don't have a lot of the fundamentals on this, and I like understanding the fundamentals. So we've had suggestions to look at this a couple of times. I'm not quite seeing the depth that I like to see. And in the blockchain gaming space, there's a lot that's just going to fail, right? So there's some basic level games, and unless they come out with much deeper games, they're not going to survive. And so does it have enough traction to get there? Maybe. I would say they're at the upper end of the mid-level gaming projects is my opinion on UFO from some of what I know about it, right? So I don't love it when they're like our partners. What our partners often means is, oh, we're on Kucoin. Oh, we use Chainlink service, and they refer to them as partners. So it's kind of like a way to overstate things. Now, maybe I'm totally wrong on this project because I would have to say that, if 100% we're knowing everything about the project, including knowing everything about the founders, and 0 was knowing nothing about the project, I'm probably only about 5%. So there's a lot of what we call in statistics extrapolation, meaning there could be a lot of cool substantive things that I don't understand about the project. So for me, the market cap is pretty high already. I love that they were smart and they went a really high circulating supply. The club was saying that the amount being released per year is not good, but there's currently lots going on and that there's burn in token in the game. So that just tells me there's a lot of mechanisms behind it that I don't understand that's going on. It would look like 100% of the tokens are in circulation, but maybe more gets minted and more gets burned. I'm not sure. But with that market cap, am I buying it? Well, there's other ones that I do know more about that I'm interested in, so I'm not personally buying it. I guess if somebody explained to me all the fundamentals on it, if I liked it, I might change my opinion on that. But for me now, it's just like I would need to know more, and yet I'm not seeing enough sizzle with their games that I'm going to dig in and do super deep research on it. What's up, Game Trove? He says, hello, Rainmakers, halftime USA. I was asking if we looked at Illuvium. We did already earlier in the show. If you watch the playback, you'll be able to catch that part. And let's jump over. Why don't you were you able to pull up the chart on it?
Yeah. I think
what do you see on the charts?
Yeah, I think we looked at it a while back, and what I see here is it trades nicely from a technical point of view. I mean, this was a very, very clear, classic head and shoulders reversal pattern. So, and then it went into this deep bear market, tried to recover here, right against this very major resistance point, which structurally extends right across the chart. So that, for me, is the big hurdle. It needs to get through there for me to believe that we're in a major base. Now, you might say, wow, why wait until it's gone all the way up there before you decide that it's based out? But look at how far it went to the upside and then came down when it was topping out. So, I don't mind it moving a long way if it's going to then move a much greater distance to the upside. And it's the same on the downside. When it broke this point, it went a very long way down. And that's the whole point of these major basing patterns. On the upside, it has made a higher low. So there's a low here and it's formed a higher low, which is good. That's a really good sign. On the downside, its trend rate is lacking slightly. So the way it's going up, considering we're looking for liftoff, we're looking for a big, sharp move to sort of say this trend is ending, the downward trend is ending, we're starting a new really bullish, optimistic phase. It's not really done that. It's kind of moved up a bit, but the rate isn't great. So that's why for me it's a bit of a mixed bag. I would prefer it to break this resistance here, just to give a little bit of padding to the distance of where it is now and its all-time low. I just want to see a bit more of that, and for it to kind of work its way up through this resistance, which for me, I think would be sensible if I was taking a long-term position. I mean, you could argue that it's so inverted commas cheap, that a small position, you could just buy a small position and forget about it. But you could do that with lots of things too. So, as a 50-50, yeah, okay, you could take a punt on it. But I would like to see it get through this resistance and start showing some broader strength before I would get in. But I am encouraged by the new low. I'm encouraged by the fact that, broadly speaking, this could be creating a much larger low. And I think the first buy point for me would be through this resistance. I'm not going to say all the zeros. So it clearing that would be my first step. And then I want to see some form of acceleration. So if you're wondering what it might look like, I want to see something like this happening, especially if it's doing it into a major resistance point. Then I'd feel more comfortable about its long-term outlook. And until it does that, I think it's,
I'm curious to hear what pumped it last August like that. That is an astounding pump last August when nothing was going on with a lot of the projects. I do like the charts. I mean, looking at this history has made me more bullish on it. Like you said, it trades pretty cleanly, and this suggests more fundamentals than I was seeing on it. So maybe I'm even wrong on this. Maybe it is a stronger project than even what I was thinking. And I'm open to having been wrong on that. Like, like I did rate this as the high end of the mid tier of the gaming projects, right? And that doesn't mean it can't pump tremendously. In fact, as money comes in the gaming market, oftentimes almost everything pumps. And sometimes the less expensive stuff pumps a ton. So the chart suggests that it's got some good potential to really run from here. So the club, it looks like he says UFO does have 6 other games coming out. So that's good to hear. And maybe they kind of create their own ecosystem. I did want to address something that, where did it say? Somebody got ruined by Strong Node.
Saul G, I think.
Oh, Saul G said, got basically screwed in the node space with Strong Block, but it's a learning experience. I didn't buy any Strong Block. See, nodes is just one way of a project running capital and executing the stuff on their blockchain. It's not even my preferred way that projects do it. Strong Node, what I didn't understand about Strong Node is, okay, they've got nodes, but what transactions are they processing with those nodes, right? So to me, it seemed kind of like a Ponzi. It's like, oh, you can make so much money because you have a node. And it's like, well, what does that node execute transactions for? So like GALA, the nodes execute transactions for their blockchain, for their game. So there's like a bigger purpose to it, right? It's not a, hey, we have nodes and these nodes produce tokens. It's, we have nodes, these nodes produce tokens, and they secure the network for our larger gaming space. So that was the piece that I was missing on Strong Block. And maybe there was something there that like some kind of bigger narrative that made sense. That's why I didn't look any deeper on it. People were FOMOing into it, and it did reach a lot of hype. And I know some very intelligent people that bought nodes. And so, and it's a catchy and attractive. I remember hearing about it. It's like, and then went through my mind, am I missing out on something here? And as I did my research, I was like, I'm not getting what it's processing transactions for, what the greater picture is, other than if I buy a node, hopefully the tokens keep going up and I make a lot of money. So I sat that one out, and it ended up working out good for me that I did. But some smart people I know didn't sit it out, and they didn't make money on it either. So that's why I like GALA. Though would I pay, I think their nodes are for sale for like $300,000. Would I pay that for a node? No, I just realized that I probably missed it. And maybe that's even a good deal still. But they did start at like 5 or 10,000 a node, and they're up over 1,000. Myria, I think if you participate in their Discord, you can get whitelisted to get one of their nodes still for like $5,000 worth of Ethereum or something, or maybe it's more than that, but not much more than that. And so Myria doesn't have, though, the track record that GALA has established, though Myria has what I feel is a strong team. GALA has created a much strong, like really good track record. And had you been buying the early days of GALA, they didn't have that track record. Part of the reason that it's done so well is they've established a great track record. So Myria is a higher risk, but a much lower price point, and that's why I like it. Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Nice. Duck Club NFT. I bought 2 GALA nodes at $8,000. That is freaking amazing. That is the coolest thing I've heard in the chat. Good job.
Excellent.
We're running long on time. I wanted to jump just because we just had this person on. We had Colin Fitzpatrick from ANML, or Animal Concerts, on. Do you mind if we look at the Animal Concerts chart?
Yeah, sure.
So while you're pulling that up, I'm going to pull up the coin market cap on it. And unfortunately, their token's pumping. And it's like, why unfortunately? Well, this is one that I've been bullish on, and I've been picking up while it's cheap. And so I've been buying the last couple months, just little bits at a time, and just picking up more and more. So yeah, they've been like, you can't tell on this, but they came down to a low. And so I've made buys all in here, and dang it, like my goal was to continue making buys. And so I don't like to see it 5x from the bottom when my plan was to keep dollar cost averaging in. But it always was way underpriced for me. So now their fully diluted market cap is like over almost 10 million. We don't know what the amount is in circulation, so we don't know what their market cap is. But this was one that, I was pleased about. And I think their fully diluted market cap when I was buying was like 3 million and below. So it's gone over 3x. Is it still low? I think so. Just sometimes there's a pullback, right? And so when you have this kind of run, I don't know, it's stair stepping up. I'm curious to see what Paul thinks about the charts.
Yeah, I mean it's basically still in a reversal. So this was the downward trend. We've got this very nice symmetry. So if this continues, we're going to see it all the way back up here, which is great. Where the resistance is it's very close to where it's retracing from. So I think it fits the bill for a pullback. But it looks good. It looks good. I think we liked it last time and still like it now. I would say it's a buy. That's the trend line that I would put in as a kind of stop loss area, which is a more kind of sustainable angle of trend, I would guess. But there's a bit of resistance here. So we had support and resistance around this zone, which is close to where it is now. So it looks like with this really sharp move, the market just needs to consolidate a little bit before it goes higher. But overall, it's on an upward trend. So yeah, bullish. And just quickly, I know we probably won't have time to look at Fantom, but it was asked for, and that chart looks pretty good.
Yeah, let's take a look at it then.
Okay, yeah.
Let's fit it in.
Yeah, so I mean, the comment was that this basically follows the broader. Who said it? I just got to roll back on the thing. Anyway, let's just look at it. Apparently, this is a good indicator for the altcoins. So I'm going to look out for that actually, because I like stuff that leads. But this, I think, when we looked at it last time, we talked about this making a low in a very good support area, which it has. It's broken through resistance. It's broken through another key resistance point, which was here. Let me just show you where that is. And for me, that this sort of half a cent area is 50 cents area is very key from a psychological point of view. So I think this has got a pullback coming, and then will continue up. Now, where I really want to see it get to and then break is around the dollar area, because that is where the beginning of the bear market for this in this phase began. So this was the topping pattern, and around $1, so round number, close to $1 was where it kicked off. So I think it's going to be drawn back there, but I would expect a pullback before it goes back up. But that's, again, a good sign. If that's going to lead the altcoins, then, so be it. That's fantastic. So where I would worry now is only if it broke below this major trend line. So,
and we may see some kind of correction taking things back to that trend line, because we're seeing that pattern in a lot of things. We've had this really steep run, and at some point that just comes back down and settles along a bigger trend line, hits that trend line, makes a decision whether things are going to continue to run or break lower. If they do continue to run, then they shoot back up. But that lower trend line is a great place to make some additional pickups and then put a stop below that in case it does reverse the other way. And so we've seen that on a number of things.
Absolutely.
I don't know. So Joe Nunez asked a really great question. What about GALA film nodes? Is it worth it? I haven't looked too deeply into this idea of the film nodes. And so it's a new concept and a new narrative. And so just because blockchain can do something is a good idea that it does do something. And so sometimes there's these ideas like, for example, crypto and AI. Like what does AI need blockchain for? It doesn't in most cases. There's some cases where it does make sense. Also, does a film node really make sense, or is that just something that will capture attention, but the practicality will never catch on? And I can't say I understand deep enough why the blockchain is helpful in that case. Now, if it's to distribute ownership of films, that would be more along the line of NFTs for films, say the early investors that fund it. I do think NFTs are a great source for funding a film and then being able to pay dividends as that film gets shown. And I think that's the future of film. So the idea of the film nodes is a little unsettling to me. Like, I can't say I get it enough that I'm like, okay, that narrative makes sense to me yet. And maybe it's just because I don't understand enough about it. But for now, I'm just like, I've got to really understand why a node makes sense for film. Cool. Everyone, thank you so much for your time and joining us. Paul, we really appreciate you joining all the Rainmaker family. We appreciate your time that you spend with us on Wednesdays. Thank you.
I really enjoy it. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all your comments and your picks. So see you next week. Thank you.
All right. Normally, I say the market's slow right now, but it's not been so slow. This is what we've been waiting for? Maybe. Do know that good decisions made during these times lead to life-changing ones when the market goes absolutely ballistic. And we haven't seen ballistic yet. We've just seen it pick up. We've seen a few things 2 or 3x, very few things 5 or 10x, but a few of them. And maybe there's a pullback. Just know that this is oftentimes what near the bottom looks like still. This wrap I have for all of you to reinforce the principles I share on this channel that make a huge difference over time in higher returns. Thanks so much, everyone.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit bad before you could. Was told to fly when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. And why when it's down, don't chase the boats that I missed. Cause I always made the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.